Hey guys, it's Jake, and has this ever happened to you? I'm never going to learn how to record electric guitar in my own house with nothing more than a laptop and a couple of other things. If only there was some insightful guide on the internet that would tell me everything I need to know to start recording guitar right at home with just a laptop and a couple of other things. Well, worry not, hypothetical person on the internet, because that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do in this video. That's right, today I'm going to be teaching you guys the basics on how to record guitar in your own home with nothing more than a laptop and a couple of other things. I'm going to show you guys everything that you need to start recording guitar, the basics on how to set it up and record it to get the best possible result. Then towards the end I'll be going over some advanced stuff to make your recording sound more professional right out of the gate. Alright, and one more thing before we get started. This is going to primarily be focused on recording metal guitar. A lot of these same principles apply to all forms of rock and guitar music and even genres that are outside of that. But for this example, I'm mostly going to be sticking with metal because that's what I know how to do the best, and it's what I think I'm most qualified to talk about. But a lot of these same principles apply for rock and any kind of other music that has guitar. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get started with everything that you'll need to start recording guitar. Alright then, so obviously the first thing you need to record guitar is a guitar. That should go without saying, but you are going to need a guitar that is set up properly and that sounds good, because when you're recording, everything's going to shine through. So if your guitar isn't up to snuff, then the recording isn't going to sound great. Alright, so the next thing you're going to need is an audio interface. For anyone that doesn't know what an audio interface is, it's basically something that you would plug into your computer, and it takes a guitar signal and turns it into a usable signal by the computer. For this example, I'm going to be using my Universal Apollo Twin X. For this example, I'm going to be using my Universal Apollo Twin X. This is kind of an expensive audio interface, but that's not at all necessary, and everything that I'm showing you can still work with a relatively inexpensive interface as well. If you want my recommendations for a relatively cheap starter interface, I highly recommend the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 or the Solo series. The Scarlett series by Focusrite is fantastic. They sound really good, have everything that you'll need to get started. They have XLR inputs, so you can also take feeds from mics. And yeah, they just sound good and get the job done, and you can get one of these for around $170 new and probably less used. I used this particular one starting off on YouTube and for about 5 years before I got my Apollo. So yeah, they're great interfaces and you know, not super expensive. So if you're looking for a recommendation on that, then this is what I can recommend. Alright, so the next thing you're going to need is a computer. That should be, again, pretty self-explanatory, but you do need a computer for everything I'm about to show you. It doesn't matter if it's a Mac or a Windows machine or a Linux machine. I don't know anyone who actually uses Linux, but it should still work. I'm going to be using a Mac for this demo, but again, everything that I'm showing you still applies when recording in a Windows machine. Alright, then next you're going to need something called a digital audio workstation, also known as a DAW, or what I'm going to be referring to it as throughout the rest of this video, a DAW. Basically what a DAW is it's a place where you can record and work with audio. There are a few examples of this. I'm going to be using Logic in this example, but again, you can use this with any DAW. If you need recommendations for DAWs to start off with, I highly recommend Reaper because it's available on both Mac and PC, whereas Logic is only available on Mac. And it has a lot of the same functions that you would expect from more expensive DAWs while being a pretty cheap starter DAW. I know a lot of people that use it professionally, and yeah, it's a great DAW if you're just looking to dip your toes in. If you have a Mac, then you can also use GarageBand to start. There is a lot less that you can do with GarageBand, especially when you get into more advanced mixing and recording, but if you're just looking to start off, then you can still do everything that I'm about to show you in GarageBand. And then the last thing you need to do is something to make your guitar sound like a guitar. When you plug into your guitar right into an interface, you're basically just going to get the dry guitar signal. And more often than not, that's probably not what you're going for. So you'd either need a program that makes your guitar sound like it's being run through an amp, something called an amp sim, or a piece of hardware that you're running into your audio interface instead, something like a Line 6 Helix or an Axe-Fx or something like that. Alright, and that's everything that you're going to need to get started, minus the cables and headphones. Alright, so now that we have everything that you'll need out of the way, let's start getting into how you're going to set everything up. Alright, so let's start with the guitar as it's the first thing in the signal chain. So basically, this should go without saying, you want to make sure your guitar is in perfect working order. That means that If your pickups are cutting in and out and you're not getting a clean signal, you should get that sorted out, whatever that might be. If the guitar isn't properly set up, you're getting a lot of string buzz, or it's very difficult to play, you should get that sorted out. And then lastly, you should make sure your guitar is properly intonated. So if you don't know a lot about setup and intonation, basically what intonation is making sure your guitar is in tune with yourself. For example, this is tuned to A. So an A open should be perfectly in tune with an A on the 12th fret. And then, of course, that should be uniform across all the different strings. Guitars are fundamentally imperfect instruments, so not every note across the fretboard is going to be in tune, but having your guitar properly intonated is going to minimize that and keep stuff like that from becoming too jarring. If your guitar does need a setup, I would recommend looking online to see if you can find videos on how to do that yourself. There's plenty of stuff online about how to get your guitar ready to record with. And if you can't do any of that stuff, then I would also highly recommend taking your guitar into a professional tech to get it set up and in recording condition. It doesn't matter how good everything else in your signal chain is, if your guitar is poorly set up or doesn't sound good, your recordings aren't going to sound good. From there, you're going to plug your guitar into the audio interface and make sure your levels are all set. Now, what do I mean by that? When you plug your guitar into an interface, you're going to see an input level somewhere, either on your DAW or on the physical interface. If you're using the Focusrite Scarlett, there's a little ring around the gain knob, and if it turns red, that means you're clipping. And there's usually an indicator for that on every audio interface or somewhere in your DAW. So what does clipping mean? Basically, it means that the volume from your instrument is coming in too high, and it's clipping and distorting and is going to give you a less than stellar recording. There is no way to undo clipping, so you want to make sure you get that at the source and make sure that your levels are set right so that you're never clipping while you're recording. You can always add more gain in, but you can't take gain out after you record something. Doing this can be done simply by adjusting the gain knob on your audio interface until it's in the green. Usually yellow means you're close to clipping, and red means you've clipped. While we're on the topic of setting your gain for recording, you also want to make sure that you're not coming in too cold. If you have your gain set all the way down, you'll be safer than the green most likely, but you'll also have a bad signal to noise ratio. It basically means you're going to be adding a bunch of unwanted noise into your signal, so you do that by setting your gain appropriately. The way I do this is usually doing a palm mute on the low open strings to check and see if I'm clipping or not. These tend to give you the most output as there's a lot of bass coming from the lower strings, and then the pick attack is just the loudest in general. So if you're not peaking on that, then you're usually good. You want to set it just before it's peaking, so you're still getting the best signal to noise ratio without actually clipping. And these vary from guitar to guitar. If you have guitar with particularly hot pickups, like a lot of mine do, you might even need to lower the pickups into the body a little bit more so they're further away from the strings to avoid clipping. This is something that I've noticed if you have guitars with particularly hot pickups, or you just pick hard, and there's nothing wrong with picking hard. It's always great to pick hard because it gives you the best tone. With that being said, that's everything that I'm going to be showing you outside of the box. So now I'm going to jump into Logic, and I'm going to show you my recording setup and then how I go about tracking guitars. Alright, so I'm going to jump into Logic, and I'm going to start showing you how I go about tracking guitar. Alright, so this is my recording setup right here. Yep, pretty basic setup. I've got rhythm left, rhythm right, center bass track, and a session of Get Good Drums Modern Fusion running for my drums. And yeah, so starting off, let me show you what my guitar signal just sounds like into the computer. So I'm really digging in there, really doing those palm mutes, getting the most output that I can out of each of them. And as you can see, I'm getting into the yellow, but I'm not quite peaking, which is what I usually want. You know, usually you should have it all the way in the green, just because then if you do pick particularly hard on some sections, then you might still clip, and just being in the green is how you make sure you're safe. But yeah, this is about where your signal should be. Alright, but yeah, that's just a DI though. So next I'm going to jump into my signal chain, and for this, you can see my signal chain right over here. I'm circling it with my mouse. I'm going to be using Archetype Nolly. And as you can see, that's probably closer to what you might expect a guitar to sound like. Imagine that. So basically what this is it's something called an amp sim. And what it does is it simulates an amplifier. And it basically just makes it sound like your guitar is running through, in this case, an overdrive pedal, an amp head, some EQ after the fact, and a cab, and then there are some post effects like reverb and delay that I'm not using for this because it's a rhythm track, and I don't use those on rhythms because I'm not Devin Townsend. All right, and yeah, that's basically what it is. And if you're curious about my settings, I just showed them all. I'm using my own IR. That's a blend of an ML Sound Labs Mesa Boogie dual rectifier cabinet and a Fat Boy Zilla cab. And yeah, this is a great IR. I use it for just about everything. It sounds really good. All right. So now, before we even start recording anything, tune. You want to tune your instrument. Most DAWs have a tuning function on it. So yeah, tune your instrument. Super important. Doesn't matter how good your take is and how tight it is. If your guitar is not in tune, and especially not in tune with another guitar track, it's going to sound like shit. So let's talk about tuning really quickly. First of all, especially when you're playing more aggressive styles of music, when you're tuning, you're going to want to pick your string the way you would pick it when you're actually playing the part. So don't like go... You know, if you're recording a metal song, if you're like going, if you're picking like that, if you're picking that hard, then you're going to want to tune like that, because the harder you pick your string, the more out of tune it'll get sent. So you're always going to want to tune as if you are, you know, playing the part. Another thing you're going to want to do is always tune up to the note. So if, say, for example, you know, that's sharp, what you want to do is you want to tune it down so it's flat, and then tune it up to that note. And the reason for that is it just stays in tune better. Usually if you tune down to a note, it'll fall out of tune quicker. If you tune up to a note, it'll stay in tune better most of the time. So yeah, that's everything that you should keep in mind when you're tuning your guitar. And, you know, you don't need to tune necessarily between every single take, but you should tune pretty often just to make sure that, you know, you're getting the best sounding takes possible. Alright, so now let's actually record some goddamn guitar. Alright then, so I'm going to be showing you how to double track first. For those of you that don't know what double tracking is, it's essentially taking one part, playing it twice, and hard panning it to the left and the right. This creates sort of like a bigger stereo effect, and it's kind of been a standard in recording rock and metal since like the 70s. It's like the 70s or 80s, I'm not sure. Around then. Well over 40 years, it's been a standard to do this. And if you're listening to any guitar album that came out in the last 40 years, odds are it's double tracked. You can't just take one guitar take and put it on both sides, because then you're essentially just going to get one track that's center panned, but it's louder. You don't want to do that, just because the slight differences between takes is what actually makes it sound, you know, bigger and wider. So you want to still play them as closely as possible, but you can't just copy and paste them over, because then you're not really double tracking. All right then. So starting off really quick, I'm going to mute the bass just because it's a little bit distracting, and I'm going to play along to a click and the drums. I'm going to give myself a 2-bar count-in. I'm going to check my tuning one more time because I'm neurotic. All right, so now let's record some goddamn guitar. All right, starting with the left side. Alright, so that's the basic riff. So that's 2 repeats of the riff, and you'll notice that at the end there, I started playing the riff again. Even though I didn't finish it, and that's just to make things easier if you're looping things. Kind of a touchy subject among some older recording people, saying that, you know, if this riff repeats X amount of times, then, you know, you gotta play it that many times. I don't necessarily buy into that. I think that looping is perfectly fine, because this is an end result thing. If it sounds good looped, especially if it's like a tricky part that's hard to play consistently more than once, then I would say, yeah, there's absolutely no problem with looping, and yeah. So now let's record the second side. I already fucked that one up. See, even a professional like me is fucking terrible at their job. All right. I think that was a decent enough take as an example. Pull this back a little bit, and let's see how it sounds. All right, there's a couple little inconsistencies here or there, and if I was recording this, you know, for real, I might get a couple better takes in there, but that's more or less how you go about doing it, and yeah, that's double tracking. All right, so then let's see how it sounds at the bass. And the bass is just playing the same thing. And when it comes to recording bass, it's the same basic principle, no pun intended. But yeah, you're just gonna tune up the same way that you would a guitar, except lower, and then play the instrument single tracked. And you can plug it into the same interface. Just remember to set your levels and everything. And obviously, you're probably gonna want to use a bass amp sim instead of a guitar amp sim, unless you're going for some weird thing. I don't know. Do something cool. But yeah, that's the basic gist of it. And you don't want to double track bass because a lot of those frequencies tend to clash with each other and you'll get a lot of out of phase or warbly stuff. So, you know, double tracking bass, generally speaking, not recommended. So now I'm going to get into some of the more nitty gritty things. First thing I'm going to talk about is quad tracking. All right then, so I've created 2 more guitar tracks and I'm going to show you a little bit about quad tracking. So what quad tracking basically is instead of 2 guitar tracks, which is double tracking, quad tracking is recording 4 guitar parts. And there's a lot of debate about this on the internet, whether or not you should double or quad track. And for me, at least, it's kind of goes on a part-by-part basis. If I want a part to have a little bit more room for leads or vocals or things like that, then I will double track things. If I want something to be tight, something that's super notey or you know, just needs to sound tight, then I will double track it because you'll get a little bit more clarity on the attack than you would if you have 4 different guitar parts. But, you know, if I want something to sound just big and mean or just something really to pop, then will double track it. Usually this will be things like choruses, big riffs like this one, or breakdowns that aren't, you know, 16th note breakdowns. And sometimes even with that, sometimes that's cool too. But yeah, it really is a part-by-part type thing, and you can, you know, have it switch every single part in a song. It doesn't necessarily need to be all one or the other. Another thing that I like to do is instead of panning the quad tracks hard, I like to pan them somewhere around 32. Just, yeah, this kind of gives them a little bit of a different flavor and just kind of fills out the frequency spectrum a little bit more, and I usually like to set them a little bit lower in the mix. Another thing you can do is you can use a different guitar tone if you want to, you know, stack them and build just like a big guitar tone. I do that a lot when it comes to recording, but for this example, I'm just going to be using the same tone and recording it again. So let me just record 2 more takes of this. All right, 1 more take. I get that again because I started early. All right, and let's hear how that sounds. All right, that's how it sounds quad, and then I'll mute the. Volume aside, what you're going to notice is that the double ones are going to sound a little bit less washy. If they're recorded well, then, you know, it's going to be very slight. You're going to get more attack transients. We're going to get a better attack, more clear attack on the each individual pick strike. With this, you're going to get, again, just like a bigger, more wall of sound type thing, which is cool, and again, part by part basis. All right, next I'm going to be doing a little bit of editing. So basically, when you have a DAW like Logic, what you can do is you can take a look at the guitar waveform here. And what you're looking at here is the DI. And as you can see here, each one of these little peaks is a pick strike. So something like around here where it kind of goes out like that is me hitting the actual string. And as you can see here, they're all like little fractions of a beat off from each other. And what you can do is you can go in and align them so that they're more consistently hitting together and better on the grid. And obviously, they kind of go all over the place just because that's how humans are. No one's perfectly on the grid. But, you know, you want them to line up as much as possible because then you're going to get a much clearer and better sound. And if you have, like, some bits where, like, one guitar is way ahead, you can cut it and then, you know, move it around and, you know, just place it in a spot where it makes sense. If one guitar is, like, way ahead of the beat. And you can see where the beats are by these tick marks. That's a super rough explanation. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into editing guitars. In fact, I'd say that I spend almost as much time editing guitar takes as I do actually recording them. So yeah, editing guitars is a big thing. All right, so next, let's talk about looping parts. What I like to do for looping is I'm going to cut off the end of these right here. I start playing it again so it kind of flows more evenly when I loop it. And then over here, I have it pulled back a little bit so you're getting the beginning of each note. And I'm going to pull it back to around here so I'm not getting too much dead space. So basically what I do is I have under drag in Logic, X-fade or crossfade. I'm pretty sure it's crossfade because that's what it is, enabled. And what basically that does is when you have two audio tracks overlap, it will crossfade them together. So the repeat of it sounds like this. And it just makes the whole thing sound more natural, makes it flow better. And yeah, that's just something that's useful in terms of comping takes together. It just makes it sound continuous, like it was all in one recording. Obviously, if you want to drive yourself up a wall, you can do everything in one take all the way through all the time. But for people that don't have unlimited time on their hands, this is a good option. All right, and that is the basics of how you record a metal guitar. And a lot of the same principles can be applied towards other types of guitar too. Like, for example, even in like a metal context, if you're recording like clean guitar, generally speaking, you still do double track, quad tracking, maybe not as much, but yeah, and like if you're in a different genre that's guitar focused, then again, you're probably usually going to want a double track just because it makes your guitar sound fuller, even if you are even if there's only one guitar part. And yeah, that's how I go about recording guitars. Obviously, there's a lot more to go over and a lot more to learn about this, but this is just sort of meant to be a starting point, and for anyone that's looking to start recording themselves. This is something that I would recommend to every guitarist who's just starting off or is at like an intermediate level that really wants to improve their playing, because when you listen to recordings of yourself, you are hearing the honest to God truth. If you are not playing well, the recording will show that you are not playing well, and then you can really zero in on things that are wrong with your playing and fix them. And then, of course, there's the added benefit of, you can record your own music and share it with your friends or band members and post it online or do whatever. Or it's just a good way to help get your ideas out and help give you a better idea of what your full song is going to sound like before you show it to the rest of your band or something like that. I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point, but recording's great. I've been doing it for years, and I think it's the thing that single-handedly improved my guitar playing the most. All right, that does it for me, guys. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I don't know why you would have concerns, but if you have them, let me know. You can leave them down in the comments or message me on Instagram about them. I have my DMs open, unfortunately, and I have my DMs open for some reason, and I also do go through, read, and respond to all of my comments. So if you have any questions, let me know down below or message me about them, and I'll do my best to help you. Let me know if you want me to do a follow-up video on any of the things I mentioned here, whether it's setting up a guitar, comping together takes, editing guitar, or even building guitar tone. I really, really like guitar tone, so I might just do that regardless of what you people want. All right, that does it for me. Have a good one.